The second scrape crossed the table, louder, the sound of blade on a rib cage, of a saw entering wet wood. The high-backed chair at the head of the table pivoted a fraction, as if whoever sat there had turned to regard them, bored. Ilara put her hands over her ears. It did nothing against the whispers. They didn't enter through her hearing. They entered through the part of her that remembered being a child called in from the dark, a name wafting from her mother's open door. Except the voice now was patient and plural, and it knew her name without having learned it anywhere ordinary. "Ilara," it murmured. "Ilara, come sit. Ilara, you are thin. Ilara, we feed our own." Lucia touched her elbow. "Stay with me." "I am," Ilara said, and realized the voice had never addressed Lucia at all. It hadn't addressed any of them. It had addressed her shadow. On the table, the meat steamed. It was thick, fibrous, wet. It did not smell like lamb. It did not smell like boar. It smelled like a house where grief had been cooked with olive oil and salt until the air was heavy with it. And something else flayed and roasted under the grief, something that wanted you to think it was welcome. Marcus sawed a slice. The knife was sharp, too sharp. It parted the meat with the ease of a thought. He lifted the slice, and the whole hall leaned in, the way crowds lean when a king lifts bread. Marcus laughed, the sound wobbling with nerves now, and set the slice to his tongue. He chewed, his jaw worked. He swallowed. "See?" he said, and in his eyes something unspooled, some cord slackening. "This is what happens when you give your mouth permission. Your body remembers every famine it has ever endured and every famine your ancestors endured, and it demands you continue." He sawed another piece. Lucia shut her folio and slipped it back into her cloak. "We should leave." "We just arrived," Severin said. "I was wrong," Lucia said. "The legend isn't a metaphor, it's a machine." "What is it?" Ilara whispered. Lucia swallowed. "A table that eats people by asking them to eat." The torches crackled. The meat bled steadily, as if the knife freed veins. The goblets refilled, without sound. Marcus ate to prove he could, which is how hunger wins when pride helps it. He ate to say he didn't fear bogeymen. He ate to say he was still in charge of his choices. He ate, and his shadow, at his feet, thickened. At first, it was a trick of firelight. The shadow had edges darker than the floor, a depth that did not match the torch's angle. Then it began to lag behind his movements. His arm lifted. The shadow's arm followed a second later. His head turned, and the shadow's head turned, as if reluctant, as if rousing from an old sleep. Then the shadow stopped, imitating it all, and simply grew, pooling wider and deeper, spilling up the leg of the chair, the table's lip. When Marcus lifted his next slice, a dark hand, not his, rose at the edge of sight and took the same slice from the shadow's plate. He froze. He looked down. He did not see the hand. Lucia did. "Marcus," she said very calmly. "Stop." "Don't," Ilara said again. But this time, she said it to the shadow, as if the shadow could be reasoned with, as if it had reasons. Severin took a step forward, hand on dagger, and the chair opposite him creaked as if someone else had done the same. The air cooled a few degrees. Frost laced the lip of the goblet nearest him. He removed his hand from the dagger's hilt. The frost retreated politely. "Enough," Lucia said. "We are leaving." She reached for Marcus's wrist. He smiled at her, and for a moment the old Marcus peered out. The man who made campfires feel like home and had a joke for every mile. "You shouldn't interrupt a host," he said gently, and set his hand on hers in apology. His fingers had cooled a little. "Host," Lucia repeated, At the far end of the table, the high-backed chair turned fully toward them. There was no one in it. The shape that leaned forward was an absence shaped like a man, as if a figure had been cut out of the world, with careful scissors and the cutout thrown away. The absence tapped a spoon against a plate. The spoon made sound. The plate chimed. 3 figures stood in the dark beyond the chair and came forward, flanking it. The first was tall and thin, with no face. Not smooth skin instead of features. That would have been a mercy. This face was simply missing. From brow to chin, an oval taken out of the world, and behind it, only darkness, rippling. In its hand, a fork. In the other, a knife. When it lifted the knife, the absence on its face widened, as if smiling with whatever lived behind nothing. The second was a woman crowned with a wreath of hooks. Her dress was butcher's leather, apron thick, the front of it slick and shining. She carried a slab of something on her shoulder, the way a farmer carries a haunch. Her eyes were steady and pitying. She would not be cruel unless asked, and the table asked always. The third were 2 children, hand in hand. They wore the same tunics, the same sandals, the same bracelets of braided silver wire, their heads tilted together. When they spoke, it was in unison and too soft to hear, yet Elara heard it anyway. They were telling each other a secret and letting everyone else overhear it. The secret was about hunger and names. Lucia's notes named them, without her ever having read those names. The Hollow Host, the Butcher Queen, the Whispering Twins. Names are often guesses. These fitted because the shapes around them agreed. "We're not staying," Severin said. It sounded unconvincing even to him. "You've already sat," the Butcher Queen said, and her voice was tired. "He has." They all looked at Marcus. He had not realized he'd taken the head chair until now. It had felt natural to step into it. It had felt inevitable. "Get up," Lucia said. "I can," Marcus said, but didn't. He lifted his hands from the armrests and put them on the table as if rehearsing a rise. His fingers made small, dull sounds on the wood. Tap, tap, tap. He smiled at Lucia again, that same apology, and then put his hand on the knife. Elara began to cry without tears. The sort of crying you do when you cannot afford water. "We trade," Lucia said, and stepped close to the Butcher Queen. Her scholar's cool had cracked, but bargain was older than fear, and she clung to it like an amulet. "We're travelers. We don't come with nothing. I have maps you don't have. I have a lineage of kings you could pin to your wall. I have the true name of the river that cut this hill. We trade." "All knowledge ends in hunger," the Butcher Queen said, not unkindly. "It only circles back to this table. You will tire of your maps, and then you will eat." "Then a service," Lucia said. "Stories, songs, a debt.